I was still in my black dress when I heard it. Not from a stranger. From my own boy. "Don't expect a penny from Dad's 92 million? My son." Mark said in the front hall. "Mom won't last long anyway." I stopped on the stairs. My hand held the old wood rail like it was the only steady thing left in the world. The house still smelled like funeral lilies and wet dirt. The kind that clings to your shoes after a graveside service. Then my daughter-in-law laughed. A light, pretty laugh. The kind people use when they want cruelty to sound harmless. "If she's still alive at the will reading," she said. "Somebody check her pulse, just to be safe." That's when my stomach went cold. They had barely left the cemetery before they came back to the house. Not to grieve, not to sit quietly, not to tell stories about the man they claimed to love. They came back like shoppers on Black Friday. Fast hands, bright eyes, hungry voices. And here's the part that still stings. They didn't even lower their voices because they didn't think I mattered. I stayed on the stairs, half hidden by the wall, watching them move through my home like they already owned it. My grandson Tyler walked right up to my china cabinet, my wedding china, and pressed a bright blue sticky note on the glass. "Mine," he said, like he was calling a seat in a movie theater. My granddaughter Lila held up her phone and slowly turned in a circle. She had one of those measuring apps open, the kind that draws lines on the screen. "We could knock this wall out," she said. "Open concept. Better light. When Grandma's, not here. Not here. Like I was a chair they planned to replace. Listen, wait, because it gets worse. Someone pulled my husband's leather chair away from the fireplace and sat in it with their shoes on. Someone else opened drawers in the study, like they were looking for spare change. I heard the soft rip of tape as boxes appeared from nowhere, already labeled. Cabin, donate, sell. Then I saw the label that made my throat close up. Old lady stuff. That was my life, folded into 2 words. A few minutes later, my daughter-in-law stepped toward me holding a tray of sparkling drinks like she was hosting a party. "We're celebrating Harold's legacy," she said sweetly. "He built something huge." She didn't offer me a glass. Instead, she pointed toward the back of the house. "You'll be more comfortable in the mudroom." Less noise. Mudroom. The room with the mop sink. The room that smells like bleach and damp shoes. The room where you keep things you don't want guests to see. I didn't argue. Not because I agreed, because I was counting. I was listening. I was storing every word like proof in a jar. They sat at my dining table that night, eating roast beef and warm rolls. My seat was gone. In its place was a folding chair from the garage, the kind that wobbles if you breathe too hard. I ate alone with a cold plate and a paper napkin. And while I chewed, I felt the corner of an envelope in my sweater pocket, because I had something they didn't know about. A document, old but clean, signed, stamped, real. And as they laughed in the other room, planning my move out like a weekend project, I pressed my fingers against that envelope and made myself a quiet promise. They can call me weak, they can call me finished, but they will not call me nothing. Not after what I did, not after what I know. And tomorrow morning, when the house is still asleep, I'm making one phone call that will change everything. I barely slept that night. The mudroom was cold, even with the little space heater they tossed near my cot like a bone. Every time the heater clicked on, I jumped. Every time the house creaked, I pictured another drawer being opened, another memory being boxed up. And then I heard them again. Not whispers, full voices, like I was already gone. "Mom doesn't even know what day it is," Mark said from the kitchen. "She'll sign whatever we put in front of her." My daughter-in-law answered, calm as iced tea. "We just need her out of the way. After the will reading, this place is ours." Wait, listen to that word. Ours. I stared at the ceiling and felt something inside me shift. Not anger at first, something deeper, like a door closing. Because here's the truth, I had been quiet for years. I thought quiet was kindness. I thought keeping peace was love. But silence, when it goes on too long, starts to look like permission. Before sunrise, I got up slowly, joints stiff, feet cold on the tile. I washed my face in the utility sink and looked at myself in the small mirror above it. My eyes were puffy. My hair was a mess, but I was still here, and I wasn't confused, not even a little. I reached under the cot and pulled out a plain cloth tote bag they hadn't searched, because it looked old. Inside was a brown envelope, folded at the edges from years of hiding. My hands shook, but my mind was steady, because that envelope held the truth, and I didn't find it recently. I kept it safe a long time. 17 years ago, before Mark's wife, before the grandkids got sharp tongues, my husband's company was sinking. Harold came home one night with his shoulders bent like someone had poured cement into his bones. He didn't cry. He never cried. He just sat at the kitchen table and stared at his hands. "We're short," he said. "The bank wants collateral. If I don't cover it, the contracts fall apart." That night, I didn't ask him to be strong. I didn't tell him everything would be fine. I just made a choice. I sold the jewelry my mother gave me. Not all at once, piece by piece, quietly. I told the jeweler it was for family reasons. I wired the money straight into the account that kept the company alive. And I made Harold promise one thing: don't tell them. Let them think you did it alone. At the time, I thought I was protecting him. Now, I see I was also protecting the people who would later step over me without blinking. But wait, there's more. After Harold died, I didn't just lose my husband. I lost my cover. The thing that kept my sacrifices invisible. That morning, I slipped on my old coat and walked out the side door before anyone woke up. The air was sharp. The driveway roses were drooping, like they were tired too. My phone didn't work. They had accidentally cut my service when they moved accounts around. So I walked to the corner pharmacy and used the payphone outside. My fingers felt stiff as I dialed a number I knew by heart. When the voice answered, I almost stopped breathing. Law Office of Daniel Keene. I swallowed. "Mr. Keene, it's Margaret Hale." There was a pause. Then in a softer voice, "Mrs. Hale, I've been waiting." My throat tightened. "It's time," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. He just replied, "Bring everything you have. Come in today. And Margaret, don't let them see you carry it." I hung up and stood there in the cold, holding the receiver like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Because now I knew something for sure. They thought I was alone, but I wasn't. And the will reading wasn't going to go the way they planned. Mr. Keene's office smelled like coffee and paper. Clean, quiet, safe. The kind of quiet I hadn't felt since the funeral. And the second I sat down, my hands started shaking. Not because I was scared, because I was finally doing it. "Margaret," he said gently, "tell me what they're doing." I didn't give him a long speech. I didn't need to. I slid the brown envelope onto his desk and pushed it forward like a stone I'd carried for years. "Start here," I whispered. He opened it slowly, page by page, and then his face changed. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "It's mine," I said. "It always was." The first document was an old bank agreement from years ago. My name was on it. My signature was on it. Not as a spouse, not as a beneficiary. As the person who provided the funds that saved the company when it was sinking. Mr. Keene adjusted his glasses and leaned closer, like he was staring at proof of something he'd suspected, but never confirmed. Then he pulled out the second paper, a trust certificate, and there it was again, clear as day, Margaret Hale co-settler, co-trust holder. But wait, this is the part that made my throat tighten. Mr. Keene opened a separate folder from his own cabinet. "Your husband brought this to me last year," he said. "He told me to keep it sealed unless things got ugly." He set a thick envelope down between us. The flap had Harold's handwriting on it. I recognized it like I recognized his voice in the dark. My heart thumped hard. Mr. Keene asked, "Do you want to hear it?" I nodded, even though I felt like I might break in half. He opened the envelope and pulled out a short letter and a flash drive. The letter was simple, Harold's words plain and honest. "Margaret carried this family when I was proud and tired. If they treat her like she's nothing, I want the papers to speak for her." I stared at that sentence until my eyes blurred. Then Mr. Keene plugged in the drive. Audio filled the room, clear, sharp, and cruel. Mark's voice, my daughter-in-law's laugh, my grandson saying, "She won't last long," my granddaughter joking about keeping my mail. I gripped the arms of the chair, because hearing it outside that house, inside a law office, made it sound even worse. Mr. Keene paused the recording. He had a security system, he said. It stored audio in the kitchen and hallway. Your husband saved copies. And then, here comes the part they never expected. Mr. Keene turned his screen toward me. Your husband added a clause, he said. A respect clause. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means, he said carefully, any heir who harasses you, threatens you, or talks about you as if you're already dead, loses their share. That money goes into a fund in your name. I sat back stunned, not because Harold was punishing them, but because, finally, he was protecting me out loud. Mr. Keene looked at me. "The will reading is in 4 days," he said. "Do you want to go in quietly? Or do you want to go in ready?" I thought of the cot, the sticky notes, the folding chair. I lifted my chin. "Ready," I said. "I'm done shrinking." And in that moment I knew it. They weren't about to inherit my life. They were about to face it. When I walked back into the house that afternoon, nobody asked where I'd been. That's how small they thought I was. The front door was half open. The air inside smelled like leftover food and expensive perfume. Someone had turned up the heat like it was their place now. My grandson's laugh bounced off the walls. It sounded too loud for a house that was still supposed to be grieving. And then I heard it again. My name, said like a problem. "There she is," Mark said from the living room. "You okay, Mom? You look tired." He didn't mean tired. He meant breakable. I gave him a soft smile. The kind mothers learn to wear when they don't want to fight. "I'm fine," I said. "But listen." My hands were calm because my plan was already moving. I walked toward the mudroom and past the dining room. They were eating from my good plates, the ones I saved for holidays. Champagne bottles on the table like it was New Year's Eve instead of the week my husband died. My daughter-in-law lifted her eyebrows at me. "We ordered dinner," she said. "There's some in the kitchen if you want it." If you want it, like I was a guest. Like I hadn't cooked in that kitchen for 40 years. I nodded and kept walking. Here's the rehook. I wasn't going to beg for a chair in my own home. I was going to take back the whole table. That night I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I did something else. I listened. Because people say awful things when they think you're harmless. In the hallway, I heard my granddaughter say, "After the will reading, we should repaint. Everything is so old." Then my grandson answered, "We can toss most of Grandma's stuff. She won't even notice." And my son, my own son, said, "Just keep her comfortable until the paperwork is done." Comfortable. Like a dog, you keep quiet so it doesn't bark while you steal the house. I went into the mudroom, shut the door, and sat on my cot. My heart was beating hard, but my face stayed still. Then I reached under the cot and pulled out my tote bag again. Inside was a second envelope, thinner than the first, but heavier in meaning. This one wasn't about money I had given. It was about work I had done. Years ago, Harold used to bring home drafts of speeches and business letters. He'd sit at the table exhausted and say, "Can you read this? Does it sound right?" I would fix the wording. I would catch the mistakes. I would suggest simple changes that made big people nod their heads in meetings. One night, when the company was on the edge, I wrote a short plan, just a few pages. Simple steps, clear numbers, a way to survive without taking on deadly debt. Harold used it. He never told them where it came from. And I didn't ask for credit. I thought love meant letting him shine. But I kept proof, quietly, like women often do. Because somewhere deep down, I knew, one day, someone might try to erase me. And now, this week, someone was. I stared at the papers and whispered, "Not this time." Then I did one more thing. Something they never expected from the confused old lady. I opened the tiny notebook I keep in my purse and wrote down every insult. I could remember dates, names, exact words, short sentences, clean facts, because feelings can be ignored. But a record? A record stands up in a room full of lawyers. Before I fell asleep, I heard them laughing again. And I smiled into the dark. Let them laugh. 4 days from now, they were going to sit in a quiet office, dressed in their best, ready to collect what they thought was theirs. And they were going to learn something simple. I wasn't fading. I was preparing. On the 3rd day after my visit to Mr. Keene, they got bold. Not loud bold. That would make them look guilty. This was the kind of bold that wears a smile and carries a pen. It happened right after breakfast. I was in the mudroom rinsing my teacup when Mark walked in with 2 sheets of paper and that careful voice people use at hospitals. "Mom," he said, "we're just trying to help you." When someone says they're just trying to help, check what's in their hand. He set the papers on the washer like it was nothing. It's a simple form. Power of attorney, just in case you get overwhelmed. My daughter-in-law, Jenna, leaned in behind him. "It protects you," she added, "so no strangers can take advantage of you." I looked at the papers. Big words, legal words, the kind that can steal your whole life with one neat signature. Then Jenna placed a pen in my hand. I could feel my pulse in my fingers. "Go ahead," Mark said softly. "Sign at the bottom." Wait, listen. I wasn't angry yet. I was disappointed in a way that felt old and deep, like a crack in a plate you can't fix. I lifted my eyes and said, Can I read it first? Mark's smile tightened. It's standard. I raised you, I said. I read recipes before I baked them. I'll read this too. For a second, nobody spoke. The morning of the will reading, the house moved like a hotel at checkout. Suitcases by the door. Coffee brewing. People talking fast. Like today was payday. Nobody wore black anymore. That part was already done, like my husband was a task on a list. Mark walked past my mudroom doorway and said, "Try not to make this weird, okay?" They weren't worried about my feelings. They were worried about the mood. Jenna adjusted her earrings in the hall mirror. "Just sit there and be quiet," she told me without looking up. "We'll handle the details." Handle the details. Like I hadn't handled their whole lives at one time or another. We rode to the law office in 2 cars. Nobody offered me the front seat. I sat in the back like luggage, staring out at wet streets and gray sky. The rain made everything look softer than it was. In the other car, my grandkids were laughing. I could see their faces through the glass at a stoplight. Bright, excited, careless. And for a moment, I remembered them small, sticky fingers, missing teeth, calling me grandma like it meant safety. It hurts different when love turns into paperwork. The law office was modern and cold, all glass and metal. The kind of place that makes you lower your voice without being asked. A receptionist smiled at Mark like he belonged there. Nobody smiled at me. They led us into a long conference room. Water bottles lined up neatly. A bowl of mints. Clean chairs that didn't squeak. Jenna picked a seat near the front, right beside Mark, like she was claiming a throne. Tyler sat down and whispered, "This is gonna be quick." Grandpa knew what he wanted. Lila said, "He wanted us set for life." Nobody said, "He wanted Mom okay." Nobody said, "He wanted Grandma safe." I sat at the end of the table, not by accident, by design. They put me at the edge because they thought I didn't count. Mr. Keene came in a few minutes later with a briefcase and a calm face. When he saw me, his eyes softened just a little. Not pity, respect. He greeted everyone, then opened a folder. Mark leaned back, confident. "Let's do this," he said, like we were closing on a house. Mr. Keene didn't match his energy. He spoke slowly, carefully. "Today we will read Mr. Hale's final instructions," he said. "Some parts may surprise you." Jenna's smile flickered. "Surprise?" she repeated like she didn't like that word. Mr. Keene looked down at his notes. "Before we begin," he said, "I need to confirm that Mrs. Hale is present and able to hear." Mark sighed. "She's here." I lifted my chin. "I hear just fine," I said. The room went quiet for half a second, like they forgot I could still speak. The first shock wasn't the will. It was my voice. Mr. Keene slid a small envelope onto the table. The flap was sealed. Across it was my husband's handwriting. "For Margaret," it said. My throat tightened. My fingers curled in my lap. Then Mr. Keene reached into his case and pulled out something else. Small, black, simple. A recorder. Mark's eyebrows pulled together. "What's that for?" Mr. Keene's voice stayed steady. "Your father left instructions to play a message before any numbers are discussed." Jenna shifted in her chair. "This is unnecessary." Mr. Keene didn't argue. He just pressed a button, and the room filled with a sound I hadn't heard since the hospital. My husband's voice. The speaker crackled once, then my husband's voice came through, slow, warm and tired, like he was sitting right beside me. "If you're hearing this," Harold said, "then I'm gone. And my family is gathered for what's left." Mark sat up straighter. Jenna's hand froze on her water bottle. Harold continued, "Before anyone talks about money, I need to say one thing clearly. My wife Margaret is not a burden. She never was." The room didn't get quiet. It got scared. I felt my chest tighten. Not from sadness, from shock. Because Harold never spoke like this in front of them. He loved peace too much. He avoided storms. But now, with his life already finished, he finally stepped into the storm for me. "You all saw the company," his voice said. "The house, the cars, the dinners. What you didn't see was the woman behind it. Margaret kept this family standing when I was too proud to ask for help." Mr. Keene pressed a button and paused the audio. He looked at the table. "Your father attached this message to a clause in the will," he said. "A clause you should have read more carefully." Mark frowned. "What clause?" Mr. Keene opened a folder and slid a page forward. "It's called the Dignity Clause." Jenna let out a short laugh. "That's not a real thing." "It is," Mr. Keene said, calm as stone. "Because your father made it real. They thought a will was only about money. They forgot it can be about consequences." Mr. Keene read from the page. Any heir who speaks of Mrs. Hale as if she is already dead, or encourages her removal from her home, forfeits a portion of their inheritance. The forfeited amount transfers to Mrs. Hale directly. Mark's face changed. Portion? How much? Mr. Keene didn't flinch. Your father set it at $200,000 per recorded incident. The heir left the room. Lila whispered, Recorded? Mr. Keene nodded and opened another file. Your father's home security system stored audio in the kitchen and main hallway. He saved clips, dates and times, clear voices. Mark pushed his chair back an inch. This is insane. That can't. Mr. Keene held up a sheet. Exhibit list. 27 incidents. Jenna's lips parted, but no sound came out. They didn't look at me now like furniture. They looked at me like a judge. Mr. Keene continued, After deductions, Mr. Mark Hale's inheritance is reduced to a small cash payment. Your father also requested it be released in monthly checks, not a lump sum. Mark's jaw tightened. You can't do that to me. I finally spoke, soft but steady. He did it because you did it to me first. Mr. Keene turned the page. Now, the remainder of the estate, home, controlling shares, and liquid assets transfer to Mrs. Margaret Hale. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. Tyler stared at the table like it had betrayed him. Mark looked straight at me for the first time in days, and his eyes were pale and wet. Mom, please. I didn't smile. I didn't clap. I just breathed. Then Mr. Keene lifted one more sealed envelope. And there is an additional matter, he said. That changes even more than the will. That envelope held the secret they never imagined, the part of the empire that was mine. Mr. Keene didn't rush. He held that last envelope like it mattered more than the rest. Mark's voice came out sharp. What else is there? Mr. Keene looked at him. Something your father never told you. Something he didn't feel safe saying out loud. When a secret survives a marriage, it's usually because it protected someone. He opened the envelope and laid out 3 items: a patent record, a stack of old pages, and a thin report with a courthouse stamp. Jenna leaned forward. A patent? She said like the word offended her. Mr. Keene nodded. 17 years ago, an investment strategy was filed under a pen name. The pen name was M. Gray. That strategy became the backbone of Hale and Mercer's public offering. The same public offering your father was praised for. Tyler blinked fast. Grandpa did that. Mr. Keene didn't argue. He simply turned to the next page. This report, he said, tapping the stamped paper, comes from an independent examiner. Ink, paper age, and handwriting were compared to known samples. My granddaughter's mouth fell open. Whose handwriting? Mr. Keene turned his head toward me. Mrs. Hale's. They were ready to fight for his legacy until they realized it had my fingerprints. For a moment, nobody moved. It felt like the room forgot how. Mark stared at me like he was trying to match my face to a new story. That's not... Mom, you didn't... I kept my hands folded. I wrote it, I said. My voice sounded calm, even to me. I sent it under a name that wouldn't cause trouble. Jenna shook her head hard. She's lying. She can't even... I can, I said, still quiet. I always could. Mr. Keene slid another page forward. The patent was never transferred to the company. Royalties were paid into a holding account in Mrs. Hale's name. Your father instructed that it remain untouched until after his death. Lila whispered, How much? Mr. Keene didn't smile. Enough that none of you should have been talking about what you'd get. While Mrs. Hale was eating alone in a utility room, that wasn't a legal slap. That was shame, delivered in a suit and tie. Mark's face went red, then white. Dad knew? Mr. Keene answered, Yes, he knew. And he was sorry. He lifted one last letter, handwritten, and read it aloud. Margaret saved the business when I couldn't. She gave up her own things to keep our name standing. If my family forgets who she is, then my papers will remember for them. My throat burned. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel it, because I did. But because I wasn't begging anymore. Jenna's voice cracked. So what happens now? Mr. Keene's tone stayed even. Now, Mrs. Hale remains in full control of her home and assets. And because of the attempted power of attorney paperwork, I've already filed for protections. Any further pressure on her will be treated as financial abuse. They came for my signature. They walked into a courtroom instead. I stood up slowly. My knees ached, but my spine felt tall. I looked at Mark. You wanted me quiet, I said. But you pushed too far. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Mr. Keene gathered the papers and placed them into a folder, then handed it to me. "This is yours," he said. I took it with both hands, and as I turned toward the door, I realized something simple and painful. They didn't lose money today. They lost the right to treat me like I was already gone. They got 48 hours. That's what the court letter said. Clean words. Sharp edges. No drama. Just a deadline. When we walked out of Mr. Keene's office, Mark followed me into the hallway like a lost kid. His voice was small. "Mom, please." I didn't know. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He said, "I didn't know." Like that made it lighter. I stopped and looked at him. Really looked. This was the same boy I once carried on my hip while stirring soup. The same boy who used to hide behind my skirt when thunder shook the windows. Now he stood there grown, dressed well, shaking because for the first time, the world wasn't bending to him. "You didn't know," I said quietly, "because you never asked." He swallowed. "We can fix this." "No," I said. "We can't fix what you practiced. You didn't slip. You lived that way." Jenna came out behind him, eyes hard. "So you're going to throw us out?" She snapped. I turned to her. My voice stayed calm. "You threw me out first," I said. "You just did it slowly with smiles. They wanted a soft old woman. They got a clear one." The next morning, the house sounded different. Not louder, just nervous. Boxes thumped down the stairs. Tape tore. Drawers slammed. Nobody laughed. Nobody played music. Greed isn't cute when it's losing. Tyler carried out a lamp with a sticky note still on it, then stopped when he saw me. His face flushed. He looked away like I was sunlight. Lila tried to speak once. "Grandma, we were just—" I raised my hand, gentle but firm. "Don't," I said. "Not today. Because here's the truth. I didn't want to hear excuses that were built after consequences arrived." By late afternoon, the last suitcase rolled out. Mark stood in the doorway, eyes wet again, like tears could buy time. "I love you," he said. I nodded once. "I loved you too," I answered. "That's why this hurts." When the door shut, the house went still. It didn't feel empty. It felt unmasked. I walked room to room, slow, like I was meeting my own life again. I peeled off the sticky notes they left behind, bright, little flags of entitlement, and dropped them into the trash. In the dining room, I pulled my real chair back to the table and sat down. No wobble, no folding legs, just solid wood, like it had been waiting for me. That night, I ate warm food, at my table, in my home. And for the first time since the funeral, my shoulders dropped. Weeks later, I made choices they never thought I would make. I didn't keep the big house forever. Too many cruel words lived in the walls. I sold it and moved to a small place near the water where the air smelled. Clean and nobody knew my last name. And with the income that was finally mine, I started something quiet but real. A small fund to help older women who get pushed aside. Women who worked, raised families, gave up dreams, and then got treated like they were in the way. I didn't just take my life back. I built a door for others. Some people think power is loud. I learned something else. Power can be a steady voice, a signed paper, and one woman deciding she will not disappear, no matter who expects her to. If this story touched your heart, remember this. Respect your elders. Some of them are the reason your life ever stood tall. If you've ever been ignored, pushed aside, or treated like you don't matter, leave a comment and tell me, what would you say if you finally got your voice back? And if you want more emotional grandma stories with truth, strength, and justice, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.